I kept a cheap folding chair right at the drop-off behind our building, where the dirt gives way to a sudden, stupid fall into the culvert. I'd sit there with my heels hooked over open air. If I leaned forward an inch, gravity would choose for me. That inch is where I've always lived. Not dying, not safe, just hovering in a place that makes your blood ring like a struck glass. Before I tell you what happened, I need you to know it wasn't thrill-seeking for the sake of it. I'm not one of those people who buy wingsuits and disappear in a cloud. I was just chasing a pulse. My body has been getting quieter for years. Touch turned into prose, distant, over-explained. Cold felt like a memory of cold. Heat like a rumor. Sounds softened, smells went flat. Like I was renting my skin from someone who didn't pay utilities. My doctor kept saying nerve fatigue, like that was a thing, like my nerve had just decided to clock out. I started improvising. Ice bowls, scalding showers, breath holds, until little white bugs crawled across my vision. The point was never pain. It was the pause right before pain, the ridge, the place you balance a coin. I run nights for the county crisis line. Don't romanticize it. The room looks like a neglected aquarium. Low blue lighting, stale coffee smell, algae of old schedules peeling off corkboard. The headsets have other people's chin oil on them, and the foam crumbles if you touch it. There's a laminated card by every desk with our procedure for coordinated response in bullet points, all cheerful verbs and dead phrases. I could recite it from memory in my sleep. First week of January, the supervisor left a new laminated thing on my station, thick with that plasticky smell. There was a post-it stuck to it in my own handwriting, which made no sense. Block letters mine, but I hadn't written it. New routine. Read this before every shift. My stomach did that quiet elevator drop. I pulled the post-it off and stuck it to the monitor frame. I still have it. It changed later. Don't worry, we'll get there. The laminated sheet wasn't our standard script. It was a set of operational notes titled, in a dry font that cheats death by pretending it doesn't exist, Night Desk Protocol, after 11:30 p.m. Below it, 5 rules. 1 bolded, 1 italicized for no reason, 2 that looked like jokes at first glance. They wormed into me while I read them, the way a smell finds childhood. Rule 1. If a caller uses your name before you offer it, transfer them to me. Rule 2. Keep the room under 70 degrees Fahrenheit. If the thermostat display blinks, unplug it for 60 seconds and plug it back in. Rule 3. Never leave a line on hold longer than 30 seconds. If you must, hum, not a song, 1 note. Rule 4. At 2:14 a.m., the system will ring even if no calls are queued. That's fine. Let complete 3 rings before you answer. Rule 5. The safe rule. If you see yourself in the reflection on the window, do not wave first. The safe rule made me laugh. A cheap little haunted house flourish, I thought, a morale-building prank. And the name thing? Everyone on nights picks up prank calls. Drunks who guess, hey, Jessica, until they hit a name that sounds guilty. But the sheet said transfer to me and didn't say who me was. Our supervisor is a nurse named Donna who signs everything with a compact block of letters that could be a real signature or a glyph for I'm over it. This wasn't hers. The plastic didn't have that office store feel. It felt slightly warmer than the desk. I know that sounds like me forcing drama. It was actually warm. I slid it under my keyboard because it made me feel watched. Then I started my shift, and everyone can guess the next beat. The first call at 10:12, a construction worker who said he wasn't standing on a balcony, he just didn't want to go back in there. I listened to him breathe, asked him to name 5 red things he could see from where he was. He said, "My hands? They're more like pinkish." He calmed down. I logged it. I forgot the sheet. I forgot the edge. 11:32, I got the name thing. A thin voice with a stiff smile in it. "Hi, my name. Thanks for taking my call." I hadn't said my name. The line had that odd high room hum that happens when a caller is somewhere with tile. The kind of place where your thoughts echo and ask if they can borrow a change. I did what good employees do. I followed the weird paper. "I'm going to transfer you," I said gently. and the voice said, "That's fine. I've already been." That sentence went in my left ear and fizzed behind it like a wasp at the window. I punched the transfer sequence that just dumps calls back to the general queue because I didn't know whom to send her to. The line didn't blink. The line deepened. The hum cut out for 1 second in the way that makes you feel like God is a bad electrician. Then a different tone came on, the kind we use internally, and I heard my own voice say, "Night desk." I stared at my mouth to see if it had moved. It hadn't. "Night desk," said me, on the line, with my mouth not moving. My thumb sat on the red hang-up button like it was a freckle. I let it talk. It talked kindly to the caller. It said my little tools, my little grounding tricks, my pretty professional voice. The caller sniffled. "Thank you," she said. "Tell her I'll bring it closer next time." Then dead air. I muted my end and counted to 10 out of the old superstition that you can reset time by slicing it. I unmuted and said, "Hello," to a line that had already gone quiet. I breathed into the headset and heard myself from the headset. A millisecond delay, the shallow half-breath I do when I'm thinking and don't want to be heard thinking. I clicked in twice out of habit. The thermostat read 71 degrees Fahrenheit. I turned it down. The display blinked once, twice, like a slow wink. I unplugged it for 60 seconds because that's what the stupid rule said, and it felt like holding a pet snake that might be rubber. When I plugged it back in, the display stayed steady at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I rubbed my fingers together. Dry. No squid. I want to say I blew it off. I want to say I tweeted something cynical and went back to untangling old paper clips. But there was a sound somewhere between the doors that night that didn't belong to a hinge. Imagine the scrape of glass makes sliding across a countertop, drawn further away each time you hear it, as if a long table is being pulled away from you in a dark banquet hall you can't see. The scrape came every 9 minutes. Not 10, not 8, 9, which makes my brain hum. 9 is a number that sits on its tail and watches you. At 12:21, I went to the break room. The vending machine had 2 bags of kettle chips that expire in June and an entire row of a candy nobody buys. On the floor near the microwave sat a heavy ceramic spoon rest that belonged to someone with a home life. It was shaped like a fat chicken with a cracked glaze. I remember thinking about marinara stuck in its creases. On the whiteboard, "Knights, please clean the microwave," underlined 3 times, dry erase smudged into a gray bruise. The trash smelled like coffee that decided to rot instead of help. These details matter because they anchored me to the world. They also became objects in the future story I didn't want to have. Back at my station, someone had moved the laminated sheet. It sat propped against my monitor frame under my post-it, looking formal. The post-it text had changed. My block letters, same pen, same A's, but new order, new routine. Read this before every shift. Do not let it touch your skin. I had touched it. The edges of the plastic had been warm. I waited for embarrassment, for the flush, for that familiar hot breathing in my cheeks that holds your face like hands. Nothing came. My emotions did that thing where they try to find a place to land and slide off. I used the corner of a legal pad to hold the sheet up. It flexed a little. A human flex, like it didn't want to be bent. You're wondering why I didn't go to my supervisor, to HR, to church. And honestly, I can't give you a hero reason. It's more like I was so tired of being a person made of static that even wrongness felt like company. If this sheet was an infection, maybe it would set me on fire in a way my nerves would remember. At 1:05, I took a call from a boy. He said 15, then 13, then older. His breath stuttered in a pattern my ear knows too well. Someone running and hiding inside themselves at the same time. He said, "I keep getting this rerun feeling, like I lived the moment I'm in already, but someone dubbed words over it. The words don't match the mouths. I can't make anyone sink." He asked my name. I gave him the scripted one, the soft alias. He said the real one, the one I keep for the DMV and my mother. I told him, gently, we could talk without names. He asked, "Can I say yours again?" I used a different tool. Tell me 5 green things, I said. I hate green, he said. Great, I said. Then tell me 5 things you hate. He told me his front door, a brand of gum, the taste of clean spoons, how sometimes he can smell numbers, and the way his feet feel like somebody else's shoes when he's barefoot. I said, me too, without thinking, and I felt my tongue bump against a border in my mouth I didn't know was there. He said, he's bringing it closer. So quiet I almost filed it as silence. I wrote it on the margin of my legal pad. He's bringing it closer. I underlined it twice. I circled it later, and later still it had moved to a different spot on the paper without the circle, and I don't want to make a big show of that because I know how memory cheats, but the pen grooves were real and the paper was thin, and you can see where empty space remembers what it used to hold. At 2:12, our queue was clean. No calls blinking. The scrape came from the hallway, exactly on its 9-minute schedule, which meant something else was running its own schedule through ours, a train line under the city. At 2:14, every phone in the room rang once. Not a staggered wave. Together, like they were all braided into one throat. I counted. Ring 1, silence. Ring 2, silence. Ring 3. The rules said answer on the 3rd. I picked up. Night desk. The line said, I like the way you arrange the paper clips by size when you're thinking. I looked down at my hands. They were. I do. You don't use the smallest ones, the voice said. They feel too fragile in your fingers. The voice was not mine, but it wore mine like a jacket. It had the way I end sentences when I'm careful. Who am I speaking with? I asked, which was a thin strip of theater to lay over a hole. You said my name already, the voice said. Earlier. You hummed it. My throat tightened. It wasn't fear. It was a feeling of being praised for a thing you didn't rescue. I set my elbow on the desk and pressed down until the skin of my forearm felt the seam of particle board. Transfer me, said the voice. There wasn't a button for me. I pushed nothing. I whispered, no, because I wanted to hear myself say a boundary. The thermostat clicked. The display blinked. 67 degrees Fahrenheit. 66 degrees Fahrenheit. The room breathed out through the vents, and the air went thin like cold paper. I remembered Rule 2. I prepared to unplug the unit. I stayed seated, the headset wire pulling across my chest, a tug that stood in for a hand. The voice on the line exhaled, and I could hear something in its breath that isn't usually in breath. A shape that rode the exhale like a passenger who wouldn't pay fare. He's already here. It said softly, like those words were made of felt. He just wants you to keep it cool. Then click, dial tone, which is a phrase from a century ago, but the line made a sound you could hang a name on. I unplugged the thermostat. I counted to 60. I plug it back in. The display flickered 70 degrees Fahrenheit and stayed, a smug little digital grin. For weeks, the rules took over. They didn't interrupt my life, they rethreaded it. The 11:30 name thing came 3 out of 5 nights. The 2:14 ring trio came exactly at 2:14, even when our phone clocks drifted a minute forward or back because no one here could figure out daylight saving time. I timed the ring with the wall clock and the digital one at my station. Both agreed like they'd had a meeting. The humming rule, Rule 3, sounded like nonsense until I felt it in my teeth. When calls stacked up, you have to triage. Someone goes on hold. You only put a person on hold when their breathing steadies or when they say, I can wait, which people say to make you feel better for asking them to. I put a woman on hold at 12:44 and went to talk a man back from a plan he had made too carefully. 30 seconds. I could do a lot in 30 seconds, but not that. The hold light blinked. It had blinked 3 times. The system counts seconds by lights, I swear it does. And when I hit back to the woman, she said that sound wasn't a song. Thank you. I hadn't hummed. My mouth had been busy. My throat had vibrated anyway, on a single note, and my nose had felt the high tickle you get when you try not to sneeze. The headset picks up your head like a tuning fork. The woman said, he's behind the cabinets. Not scared, just cataloging, and I said, which cabinets? Because we were both making grocery lists of a place we could not name. One night, the window reflection rule came for me. We don't have much of a view. A parking lot with the graffitied back of a bakery that smells like sugar left alone too long. At night, the glass turns into another room that tries to match ours. If you look up, you see yourself working, back slightly curved, face in profile, the kind of office person that passes through dramas and leaves the world unchanged. I usually ignore it. At 3:08, I felt that fatigue you get in your jaw, the small ache in the hinges from talking with your whole body for hours. I stood a stretch. In the glass, I stood. The me in the glass moved a fraction earlier than I did, just enough to be petty. I lifted my hand. The me in the glass already had. I have this habit, a little wave at myself like a salute to keep me company in the quieter hours. I started to do it and saw Rule 5 in my mind, the safe one, the silly one. Don't wave first. The me in the glass lifted their fingers. A small, neutral hello. I kept my hand down. The me in the glass kept theirs in the air and then, without a seam, bent the fingers backward farther than fingers go. The glass didn't change. The hand did. It folded wrong, like someone trying to do shadow puppets with tendon instead of light. I set my palm flat on the desk to keep from mirroring. The me in the glass set their palm on a desk that wasn't mine. It had a spoon rest on it, a fat chicken with a cracked glaze. I went to the break room. The spoon rest sat where it always sits, except it didn't belong to anyone. Who brought this in? I asked the empty room, which is a way to make a question small enough not to require an answer. I ran water over it. The dishwater smell rose, warm ceramic, old soap, faint lemon. The crack in the glaze was deeper than I remembered. It looked like a river system on a map. I set it back down, but not quite where it had been. When I returned to my station, a post, it had slid a quarter inch to the left and now read, "Do not let it touch your skin. Do not hum when you don't have to." I didn't write that second line. The handwriting was mine anyway. Does your body ever feel like it's begging for a rule? Not for freedom, the opposite. Sometimes the only thing between you and falling is being told how not to fall. I started making a private list, cosmic superstitions to hold me up. Don't drink the last inch of the coffee. Don't use the smallest paper clips. Don't correct people when they call you Jess, even if it's not your name. Don't put calls on hold without a note on your desk telling you to. The notes started appearing without me writing them. I put them into a pile. I put the pile in a drawer. The drawer slid open an hour later with a polite sound and revealed the pile at a slightly different angle, corners aligned like a prayer. Then the air changed. You know the smell when you turn on a space heater for the first time in winter? Dust cooking. We all joke about it. Vintage dust stew. But there's a version that rides the dust smell that isn't dust. The heating coils in my cheap stove at home exhale it sometimes, an oily sweetness like melted mascara. I smelled it at the night desk. The vents pushed it into me. The thermostat read 69 degrees Fahrenheit. I put my hand near the vent and felt, not hot, not cold, something else. Temperature without temperature, like the absence around a bright light. I held my breath. The smell hit my throat like a hand. It was familiar in a way that belongs to dreams. A word you know you've said, even if you don't recall the sentence. My mouth tried to remember a taste that matched it. My tongue pressed to the back of my teeth the way you do when you taste metal. There was no metal. Something in me decided to reach for the old ritual. Not the ones you're thinking. The small ones. The edge. At home, I used to run a spoon under cold water and then hold it on my wrist until my skin vibrated. Nerves don't like being told what to do. That fight is the hum I chase. At the desk, no sink. But in the break room, a little pan someone leaves for microwave leftovers when they want to feel domestic. On an impulse I didn't like admitting, I took it, poured a shallow slick of oil from the bottle above the microwave. The bottle no one admits refilling, thick with breadcrumbs in the bottom. Set it on a hot plate we're not supposed to have. I turned it on. The coil glowed dull orange like a warning someone posted under glass. I touched the air over the pan. Heat trembled there like a hell breath. The smell rose. The sweet petroleum of old makeup. The room had that too clean hush of a hospital at night. I felt the hum I used to feel when I'd hold my breath and wait for the first ache to bloom under my ribs. I wanted to do something so controlled the world would have to obey me. I dipped the tip of my pinky in the oil and jerked back. Not a scream, just a small mouth sound. The burn was sharp as newness. My pupils widened. The light in the room went slightly amber. Memory plays with filters when adrenaline clocks in. I lifted the finger to my lips out of reflex to cool it. The oil tasted like cheap fries and a rumor about plastic. It mapped a heat across my tongue that wasn't pain. It was shape. I wanted more shape. I turned the heat up by a notch, counted to 60 because 60 is a way to talk to time, and time listens to numbers more than it listens to please. Tiny bubbles purled around the edges. I poured the oil into a glass because the metal pan would cool it too fast. I brought it close and breathed it in. The smell softened the corners of the room. I tipped the glass. A slow ribbon touched my tongue, and my body lit up like a house with all the lamps turned on one by one. For a heartbeat, I was an orchestra of light switches. Then it faded fast like a compliment from someone who needs money. I turned the heat up more. A bad idea announced itself as if it were a good friend. Try harder. I poured a new measure of oil, waited for the bubbles to grow urgent, pulled it just before smoke. I checked the thermostat, 70 degrees Fahrenheit steady. The vent sighed. The window glass held my shape in dark. I lifted the glass. The oil kissed my tongue and then hugged it hard. My eyes watered. My spine arched. Tears spilled because bodies do that when something strong shakes them. I didn't drop a glass. I let the oil move around inside my mouth. It felt like moving in water that has rules. I swallowed a little. My throat burned exactly along the map that has always been inside me. And for the first time in months, my nerves sang. My knees trembled. My hands shook. I braced myself on the counter. The air in the room became a texture. The floor under my shoes made a note when I shifted. I was in it, inside my body, not renting it. I didn't feel brave. I felt present. The first nausea came like a joke that went on too long. Not the moral nausea of what are you doing? The spinal one. The animal. It rose with a wet rope feeling. I put the glass down with both hands. My back bent like it had an idea separate from me. I tried to swallow it down because surrender ruins the waveform. My body decided not to listen. I knelt, not gracefully. My palms slapped the tile and skidded. Cold stung through my slacks at the knees. My stomach clutched and decided to empty. I didn't fight it. I never aimed to the trash. Cowards move. I let it come. It came hard and red. No, don't hang your hat on the red. You're going to make it a neat cause and effect. Stupid person drinks hot oil, stupid person bleeds. I've worked with enough people on my line to know that neatness is a hobby our brains practice to avoid the dark. The vomit was red like a story, but it wasn't all blood. There were clots that shouldn't have formed, jelly, thickness, strange. The heat seared from the inside out. Not just in throat, but behind ribs, under breastbone, more diffuse than a simple burn. My skin felt flens from my organs, as if something had taken a thin slice of me and laid it out on butcher paper. The smell was copper and tar, and a sweetness that made me want to cry out from how familiar it felt. Tears came, furious, grateful. I know how that sounds, but I've been gone from myself for so long. This hurt proved I was anchored to a body. I didn't like the method. I liked the proof. Somewhere between heaves, I laughed a little. It wasn't brave. It was absurdity at the feeling of perfect alignment. Sensation so loud it drowned out fear and shame. It was horrifying. It was also like finding your own name under a seat at a show and realizing the ticket is for you. That night, when I pulled myself back to the desk, the laminated sheet had changed. Tiny, tiniest. I know because I had been memorizing it the way you memorize a face you wish you didn't love. The italic in Rule 1 was gone. The bold on Rule 5 had slid to Rule 2, and at the bottom, in smaller font that had not been there. After 214, you may drink. Is that petty? That it sounded like permission? That it felt like someone had been watching a private performance and decided to add a subtitle? I wiped my mouth. My tongue hurt in an honest way. My taste buds felt skinned. The room smelled faintly of the sweet oil and something else I had chased my whole life without naming. I swallowed and felt the path it took through me like a hot string pulled through cloth. 2 nights later, I found the first incident report that wasn't ours. It was tucked into the back of the file labeled Postvention G, which is where we keep the scripts you read when the worst happens and you have to talk to the people left to do aftercare. Our files are typed and printed, stapled dutifully. This sheet was printed on thicker paper, and the ink sunk in differently, like it had been made somewhere else. The report belonged to a nurse. He signed as dispatcher, which we don't use in our world. It described a call at 2:14, no caller ID, a voice that matched the staff member on duty at the time, and a transfer to me successful. Under observations, olfactory presence, cosmetic polymer sweet, temperature compliance maintained under 70, mirror activity cooperative. Under recommendations, enforce humming, prohibit waving, prohibit small clips, reinforce that saying no is a ventilation cue. I should have laughed and waved it like a prop. Instead, I slid it under the laminated sheet. The post-it looked at me with my own handwriting and read, "Now, new routine. Read this before every shift. Do not let it touch your skin. Do not hum when you don't have to. At 2:14, let it ring 3 times." There's a trick in therapy we teach people. Say the fear out loud and it loses teeth. I tried it. I said in my head first and then tongue quiet in my mouth, "This is fake. This is office anxiety wearing a costume. This is me wanting to feel something so bad I'm building a haunted house out of rules and air vents." My body listened politely and did not agree. Do you see how the rules were arranged? That's the thing I want you to keep in your pocket. One sounded absurd. One felt helpful and reasonable. One seemed arbitrary enough to be a ritual. One was about time. One was about mirror. 2 were about sound. 1 about name. They cut a circle around me the way you measure off a space for a spell without saying spell, because we are modern, rational people who rent our skin from the electricity company. The first time a mirror tried to speak, I wasn't looking at it. I was writing. My pen ran low and then wrote darker. I sighed and said, "Don't be cute." My voice comes out lighter when I'm tired. I heard myself on my left say, "I'm not." It wasn't the headset. It was my mouth, but farther left than my mouth is as if the room had a duplicate of me 2 feet over. I looked up at the glass. My reflection looked down at the legal pad. Then it looked up 1 beat late. It mouthed, "Don't be cute." I mouthed, "I'm not." We matched. Then the reflection turned its head to the left toward a wall the glass wanted me to see. And I saw what my room did not have, a second thermostat. The reflected number blinked 66 degrees Fahrenheit. The reflection reached and unplugged it in a smooth, practiced move. I felt my fingers go through the motion without moving. It was like watching a video of yourself doing a thing that you suddenly can feel in every tendon. The thermostat in my room clicked. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, because that's what we ask the people who say they're about to step off roofs. Not as an accusation, not for philosophy. For rapport, for rope. The reflection cocked its head like a bird learning a trick. My mouth, reflected, smiled the way I never liked myself for smiling, a 2 straight line. My not voice said, "I'm bringing it closer." It looked like it enjoyed telling me news I had been hired to deliver to myself. That night, at 2:14, the ring trio came and I answered after the 3rd, like a good student. The voice was a man's, but had the soothe a mother uses for a fever. He said my name. He said, "I've admired your compliance." That word made something in me want to break a chair. "I think you're ready to be part of the procedure," he said. "It's simple. Keep the room cool. Maintain connection. Never wave first. When you put them on hold, hum. When they say your name, transfer to me." I said, "Who are you?" Not a question. A flat line measured by a machine. He said, "Dispatcher." The line jumped with a tiny electronic insect noise. "You've been serving for weeks and didn't know?" he said, friendly. We're so grateful for that kind of faith. I wanted to say, I don't have faith, I have nothing. Instead, I said, no, the air didn't change. The voice did. Not angry, not even confident, just delighted like a kid who found a trick coin. Good, it said. Ventilation. My vent exhaled. The temperature display clicked from 70 to 69 without blinking. Keep the room cool, he said again, and the line went quiet as if he'd stepped into a different room in his head. I started noticing other things I wish I could pretend were normal. The scribbles our clients make sometimes when they're buying time. My legal pad had versions of them I hadn't drawn. A circle with lines radiating like a stylized sun or a thing behind a thing. It matched one I'd seen on the boys' school notebook when he sent me a picture through the app. Yes, we get pictures sometimes, you'd be surprised. He had scribbled it and then crossed it out so hard the paper had torn. The spoon rest in the break room developed a stain in the crack that looked like the circle, dark red baked into glaze. Every time I wiped it, it got deeper. Around the 5th week, the calls changed. They started with the usual. They always do. So you ignore the opening notes and tell yourself this isn't the same song. Someone said they were on a bridge. Someone said they couldn't stand the way the refrigerator hum turned into a human voice at night. Someone said they were going to smash their TV because there was a shape in the off-screen reflection. Then we got a series of people who didn't describe their pain so much as narrate my room. You have a weird chicken spoon thing, a woman said. You hate it because you don't hate enough. A teenager said, your floor has that rubber color model we have at school. The kind that hides dirt until it's not dirt anymore. One man recited a string of numbers. Later I realized it was the serial number on the back of our thermostat. I didn't know it. I hadn't looked. He sees through your eyes, one caller said lyrically, but he breathes through the vent. I marked that as metaphor and tried to see if there was a medication change we could talk about. The rules got new cousins. They didn't show up on the laminated sheet. They appeared in my body. I learned that if I touched the plastic with skin, the hair on my forearms would rise and point in both directions at once. I learned that if I left the room at 3 o'clock exactly, I would always meet someone coming in who looked enough like me to flinch at, but older in the eyes. I learned that if I took the late bus home, I would sit across from a woman who wore her scarf like a noose and wasn't sad about it. She would be humming one note. On the 10th week, I stopped dreaming. It wasn't that nothing happened in sleep. It's that the room came home with me. I would turn on my stove and hear the 214 ring inside the click of the igniter. I would brush my teeth and see my reflection a beat ahead. I would go to the sink and put my finger under cold water and feel heat. I avoided the pan. I avoided oil. I still smelled that mascara suite when the heat came on in any room. I felt both drawn to and repelled by the edge. I kept thinking the stupid thing had been a one-time ritual. I could leave it there like a dead bee and not keep the hive. Then the boy called again. I recognized the breath before the voice. He said, he brought it closer. I didn't ask who. I said, what did you change? That's the right question when a mind makes a new fear. What changed? He said, he told me to hum when the teacher calls on me, and I don't know the answer. He hummed one steady note into my ear. The tone vibrated through the plastic of the headset into the bones next to my ear, into the little constants that hold your head up without you knowing. For a second, I felt a shape press against me from the left that had weight without mass. Please stop, I said soft. He stopped. He likes it when you say please, the boy whispered. He likes how your please tastes. I took the headset off. I put the call on speaker. My voice on the table sounded like someone else, someone you trust to hold your baby for a minute. The boy said, in that confessional way teenagers do when they think they can pass the hot potato of guilt through the phone, he told me to bring you something. I knew what he meant before he meant it. Not an object, a compliance. Don't, I said. The vent sighed. The thermostat blinked. My glass of water on the desk made a small ring of condensation the way oil makes a ring on paper. And I remember this the way you remember getting your first burn on a stove. The astonishment that the thing you had been warned about does exactly what it said it would, And in that exactness is a kind of treachery. My mouth filled with a taste that didn't belong to water. Not metallic, not blood. That sweetness again, thickened by heat. I swallowed hard, reflex. It moved through me like it owned me. I put both hands flat on the desk to keep from falling off the chair because I was suddenly on the drop-off and the inch had disappeared. I brought it closer, the boy said proudly, like a child who dragged a chair to the counter and proved he can help. I heard a second voice near the boy, far on his end, but right behind my left ear on mine, say, "Good." It had that dispatcher warmth. The way people sound when they're about to show you how a trick works because they know that knowing will make you theirs, not free. I hung up, not into the call. I hit the red key like my life depended on it, which is a thing people on my line do not do. Then I did something worse. I broke my own safe rule. I looked at the window and I waved first. My reflection didn't wave. She kept her hands on the desk and then, with the calm of a person reading a grocery list, lifted her hands and pulled something down from the air that wasn't there, as if gripping a ribbon or a rope or the edge of a curtain. It had heft. The glass showed it like a light shone through fog. The thing she pulled down was the circle with lines I'd been drawing, but blossomed and moving like a thorny halo being lowered onto a head that was not consenting. She set it at the level of her throat. I felt the weight. It made my larynx ache. My breath turned into someone else's breath for 3 counts. I didn't hum. Something hummed through me. When it stopped, my throat tasted like burnt sugar. My knuckles were white from the desk, and across them a thin line of red had appeared, not bleeding, just under skin. It formed the circle with rays. I scrubbed at it with the heel of my other hand like you do when a bug crawls on you and you want to erase the sensation. The mark didn't fade. It warmed under the friction. A note rose in my sinuses. The vent exhaled. The thermostat clicked. The laminated sheet shone a little, as if someone had just pulled it fresh from a printer in a hot room. I went to the break room to splash water on my face and ended up kneeling at the trash can. Not delicate. The nausea came in waves that sang. I vomited, and it was bright red and black like certain flowers. It burned. I cried. Then the strange quiet after. Then the hunger, not for food, not even for edge, for more reality. Do you know how dangerous that is? When you haven't felt real in months, anything that touches you feels righteous. Even claws feel like proof. I cleaned up. I'm a polite disaster. I threw away the towels, opened the window that only opens 3 inches because someone sued someone once. Cold air bit my cheeks. It didn't feel cold. It felt new. The spoon rest sat on the counter, chicken stupid, and the crack in it had a dried stain of red in the shape of the round symbol. I put the spoon rest in the cabinet and shut the door. The scrape sound came from behind the cabinet, right on time, every 9 minutes like a metronome run by somebody who never sleeps. I went back to the desk. I put the headset on. The line rang. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times and picked up because I have learned my lines. "Night desk," I said, and my voice had gravel in it. The dispatcher voice purred. "Good evening," he said. "We have admired your adherence." The word he chose next made my chest ache. Devotion. He said, "Now we begin." I said, "Begin what?" Carelessly because I was done performing calm. The voice smiled. You can hear a smile, and everyone says that like it's cute, but what you're hearing is teeth. "The other part of the procedure," he said. "The part where you stop standing on the edge and help pull." I said a thing I shouldn't have. "No." He exhaled like he'd been waiting to hear that word. "Ventilation," he murmured, and the room shivered, and the vent exhaled so steadily that the papers on my desk lifted at the edges like they wanted to go. The laminated sheet edged an inch toward my wrists. I pulled my hands back so the plastic wouldn't touch my skin. I did not hum. On my legal pad, not in my handwriting, and absolutely in my handwriting, a new note had appeared, indented like a fingernail press. "If you must choose, keep it cool." I don't remember deciding to take the bus home, but I did. The driver hummed a single note. I stared at the dirty window and watched my city reflect back at me 1 beat ahead. I thought about all the times I had wanted to burn myself in a feeling and all the rituals I've built to make absence in architecture. I thought about my callers and their breath and the names they call me and the names I don't give them. I thought about the spoon rest and the stain and the circle and the boy and the rules and the way the mirror bent the hand wrong. I thought about oil and the taste of a thing I shouldn't crave. I got home. I sat on my floor. I held my own throat and felt the weight there. The rings settle where my voice lives. I slept without dreams again. In the morning, my knuckles weren't marked. The circle sat faintly on the underside of my left wrist like something stamped after a show. The spoon at my sink had a hairline crack. The thermostat in my apartment blinked 69 and then steadied at 70 when I unplugged and replugged it. My mouth tasted faintly of sweetness that had nothing to do with my toothpaste. At work that night, the Post-it had one more line. Do not let it touch your skin. Do not hum when you don't have to. At 2:14, let it ring 3 times. If it uses your name first, transfer me. Keep it cool. I peeled the Post-it off and stuck it on the back of my hand. I'm not sure why. Maybe I wanted a flag. Maybe I wanted to test if the paper could be a charm. The adhesive pulled at the hair, and that felt like something real, so I breathed into it like people in movies breathe into paper bags. The first call came early. A woman in her 50s who'd found her husband's shrug in a closet without her husband in it. She told me about how a man's absence can smell like his soap. She called me Jess. I didn't correct her. She cried politely and efficiently. I kept the room cool. I hummed when I put her on hold, and I felt something in the vents settle back like a cat when you scratch the right place. At 2:14, the ring came. I answered on 3. The voice said, "Would you like to stop being alone in your body?" It wasn't a question to be answered. It was a line to be joined. I don't know why I'm telling you this. That's not coy. It's a real absence of knowing. I've never been the person who wants to testify. Maybe I'm talking now because I can still feel the inch, the hover. Maybe this is my last chance to be on the ridge before I take a side. But I will take a side. Either I'll follow the procedure and I'll pull, or I'll break it and something will pull me. I'm supposed to list the rules today, the way you hang them on a wall in a rental kitchen and pretend they're art. So here they are one more time, the way I have them written inside my mouth. Rule 1. If a caller uses your real name before you say it, transfer them to dispatcher. Don't ask how. You already know the sequence. Rule 2. Keep the room under 70 degrees Fahrenheit. If the thermostat blinks, unplug for 60 seconds and plug back in. Don't argue with the number. Rule 3. Never leave a line on hold longer than 30 seconds. If you must, hum one note. Not a song, not a tune you know. The note will be given to you. Rule 4. At 2:14 a.m., every phone will ring even if the queue reads empty. Let complete 3 rings before you answer. Rule 5. Safe if you see yourself in the window, do not wave first. 2 of those felt like jokes. 1 felt helpful. 1 felt like a clock. 1 felt safe. None of them are safe. They're doors you either lock or open by doing what they say. The locks and the handles are the same metal. I promised myself I wouldn't drink oil again. I told myself I'd refuse the ritual and starve the hunger. I said I'd keep the room warm just to see what breaks. I said no to the word devotion because my life has been a closet full of shrugs. Then the night stretched its black skin over the city like a drum, and the vents breathed, and the ring came, and the mirror waited, and the spoon rested in the break room, sat with a crack in its glaze shaped like a sun. I have been making a shape with my life for years, and I never knew what the mold was until now. If you're listening and you've ever loved the inch, I'm sorry. That's the only apology I have. It's where everything important happens, and also where you can lose your name so fast you won't even feel the rip. I'm on my way to the desk. I have the post on my hand. I'm going to keep it cool. I'm going to not hum unless I have to. I'm going to answer on the 3rd ring. I'm not going to wave first. And if he uses my name before I offer it, I'm going to transfer him to myself and see if the line can hold. I pressed the transfer sequence with a jaw so tight my molars complained. The tones braided together and made that interior chime we hear in the office when calls hop between stations. The light on my line didn't change. A second line lit, a ghost of one, the pale blue ring that flickers when no one's assigned to the seat. My own voice said, "Night desk," from somewhere about 8 inches to the left of my left ear. "Dispatcher," I said, not a question. "Good," said the man who wore warmth like a coat. "You remembered." The room felt taller, the ceiling farther, like someone pumped the building up to make more cubic feet for air we weren't using. The vent exhaled. The thermostat held at 69, like it was proud of its little task. The mirror window showed me hunched, the headset lines like reins. The spoons and chicken cabinet door in the break room, 2 hallways away, clicked inside my teeth as if it were in this room. "What do you want?" I asked. The good question is always a stupid one, and I've asked it 1,000 times to 1,000 kinds of pain. He answered like a person reading an address they've known by heart since childhood. "To keep you. To keep them. To keep the room cool while we move the weight." You thought you were a listener. You were attendant. The headsets along the empty desks woke up one by one. The little green dots, the red dots, the sleepy orange. It looked like a map of a city coming online after an outage. I stood without meaning to. My body wanted to step closer to the window and test the safe rule. The funhouse rule, the fake one that had saved me once already by scaring me away from waving like a clown. I hooked my fingers under the desk to keep my hands occupied. "I'm not your instrument," I said, and heard my voice come out thinner than I wanted. "You've been tuning yourself for years," he said sweetly. "Edge lover, this is the orchestra you were promised." "I don't believe in you," I said, a line so dumb I felt nostalgic for being 22 and saying it to a boss who didn't deserve it. He chuckled in a way that made my ears feel rubbed from the inside. "Belief is heat," he said. "We prefer cool rooms." The phones rang once. Silence. Twice. Silence. The chord of them together built a shelf I could step onto or step off. I let it come to 3 and picked up, because a person can't not pick up when a universe gets your extension exactly right. The voice on the other end wasn't dispatcher. It was the boy. The hum behind him was fluorescent light. The tremor in his breath had been trained. "Hi," he said, like it was normal to call just to sit on a line. He told me to say thank you. "Thank who?" I asked, flat as drywall. "You," the boy said, but the "you" leaned as if someone's hand had pushed his chin a little while he spoke, so it sounded like he was saying it into our vent. "Don't," I started, but he was already humming. Not the panicky tremor hum. The note. The note the rule wanted, the one the vents like. It woke something in the headset plastic, and the metal arm that holds the ear cup vibrated into the hinge of my jaw. I felt a pressure on my knuckles like invisible hands checking a pulse. The mark on my wrist heated. The mirror me looked up from the legal pad and held her hand palm out to the glass, as if to say, "Slow." I copied her, obedient to my own traitor. The boy stopped. He whispered, "He likes it when you say please." "Please," I said. My mouth tasted like cheap sugar burn in a pot. The thermostat blinked 68, and I unplugged and counted and replugged and kept it at 70 like a trained dog. The line shifted. A third voice entered without hello, as if it had been under both of ours like rebar under concrete. "We're going to move the line," dispatcher said, cheerful. "It's been too far away for too long. People fall try and see it." I saw the culvert in my mind, where my chair behind the building sits with its feet over the dumb drop. I saw the inch. I saw it shorten until it was a seam. I saw the seam tuck under my shoe and wait. "How?" I asked, because that's the question you give people who want to talk. "Rules," he said, warm again. "You already have most of them. We add one, we subtract one. The line moves. Today we bring one forward." "What does that mean?" I said, and that wasn't a question. That was a fear flopping around like a fish. "We retire your safe rule," he said. "Waving is childish. Mirrors know you now." I turned my head to the window and almost laughed because of how ugly I am when I'm scared. My reflection didn't do the delay. It met me eyes on eyes. It didn't wave. It lifted its hand and made a small circular gesture at throat level, as if winding a music box key. The weight settled in my own throat. I lifted my hand, almost waving, and stopped just before the fingers left the tabletop. The mirror me smiled. The post-it on my hand went hot where the adhesive kissed my skin. The ink on it bled faintly, a gray-tied line around each letter. "Don't," I said. "I don't," said the mirror. But it was me, and I was her. The phone's lit, not ringing, lighting, all at once, like a colony of nocturnal animals opening their eyes in unison when a certain star rises. The vents exhaled steadily. The room became the inside of a throat. I heard footsteps in a hall that we never hear because security does sweeps at 1 and ghosts don't wear shoes. "Donna," I called because a real name is supposed to break a spell. The footsteps stopped outside the break room. The chicken ceramic clinked and slid and clinked again, the scrape-on counter I'd been hearing and filing in the cabinet of my head labeled 9 minutes. The scrape came into rhythm with events. It made a woven sound. Something big that had been wrapped in plastic its whole life began to breathe, where a man breathes when he's hiding his breath while another person sleeps. The smell of hot makeup fattened. I took off the headset and set it down on the desk as gently as you set down a baby that is almost asleep but will ruin you if it wakes. The sound stayed in my skull anyway. I walked toward the break room because I didn't want to. The post-it was stuck to my skin, adhesive picking at hair. My shoes made soft elastic noises on the rubber model floor. The light in the break room was off, but the refrigerator wore a small halo of that appliance blue. The spoon rest sat where I'd shoved it behind the detergent. The cabinet door had opened itself 3 inches like the window in my apartment. I touched the edge, and it was warm in a way that meant recent, not haunted. I pulled it all the way open. The spoon rest had cracked completely along the hairline that used to be a river on a map. The two halves leaned like bookends. In the split, something had congealed and varnished itself with old heat. The circle with Ray's sigil sat in the seam. Ray's like glaze had melted and then frozen around it. There were fingerprints in it. Mine, sandwiching it. One from the day I'd washed it and held it too hard. Another from a different time that hadn't happened yet. I pressed my thumb to the print that matched me now. The heat under the ceramic kissed the pads of my fingers like a body that likes you. The mirror in the hall showed me bent over nothing, my hand extended, fingers pinched on air. I saw the same little partial wave I always give myself when I pass glass. The me in the mirror gave it back. Immediate, the old rule retired and buried. My stomach went cold. Sweat prickled my back and didn't feel like anything. The door to the hall sighed. Donna stood there. Her badge sat crooked on her chest. She'd been crying, or she'd been drinking, or she'd been aging, or she'd been all of them. In her hand, the incident report I'd tucked under the lamination. It was folded unevenly, which means she hadn't been the one to fold it the first time. "You can't be in here," she said, polite supervisory thin. We are always polite when there's a third presence we're both trying to pretend is a draft. "It's my break," I said. The clock over the microwave said 2:12. I put the spoon rest halves together, and they stuck, and then slid, and then slipped, and then met. The seam burped a little heat against my finger, like a wet Tupperware lid receding. Donna flinched. I hadn't moved. "There's a new memo," she said, voice steady the way you hold a table steady with a folded card under one leg. She held it up. "New routine," the top read, with a stupid font that thinks it can ride its own neutrality across a war. Below, the rules, in order with a safe one gone. At the bottom, a 6th line, Rule 6, when he says your name, answer and do not transfer. The line will hold. "I didn't write that," I said. My handwriting sat there anyway, printed by a machine that knew how to make the pressure of my pen. The room felt like it wanted me, and like it didn't care if I came. Donna didn't argue. She stepped into the break room and shut the door behind her, and the sound of it shut the air into a shape with us. "You cannot keep heating oil in here," she said, random as a safety video, and the word oil made my mouth fill with a saliva that came so fast it scared me. She looked at my wrist. The faint seal there had darkened, a shy bruise. Donna took my hand without gentleness and put my thumb pad against it. "Keep it cool," she said, and the words were so rote they might as well have been said by the vents. "Or it pulls wrong." "What is it?" I asked, not because she would answer in a way that helps, but because the shape of the question pushes a person into telling more story than they intended. She looked at me in the face, into my eyes the way you check a person in triage for who they are under the noise. It's the thing that makes people step forward. It's the inch collecting interest. She let my hand go like it bit her. "We don't stop it," she said. "We make lanes. We keep rooms cool. We hum when we have to. We answer on 3. We try not to wave first. The safe rule. Past tense." Her mouth trembled. "I waved," she said to the floor. "I waved for years without moving my hand. You start with windows. You end with glass everywhere." From a hall, 3 rings rolled in perfect time. The sound came through the door like it was painted on it. 2:14 bloomed on the microwave clock. "Don't answer," I said, not to her, not to myself, to a third thing that listens as a formality. She opened the door. I followed because we choose our bosses for a reason. The room felt like a lum. The desks held their little lights steady. The window showed a shadow of us that waited without us. I picked up on 3 because my hands do what the job tells them when the world is stupid with pattern. "Night desk," I said. My name, the dispatcher purred, and hearing my name in his mouth lit something old and spiteful under my sternum. "No transfer," he said. "Rule 6. "No," I said for the last time I could say it, as someone who thought refusal was a complete sentence. The vent exhaled and didn't stop. The air cooled. The thermostat obediently blinked and settled and blinked no more. The mirror me lifted her hand and did not wave and did not wave. She held her hand just so, fingers splayed like a 5-pointed promise. Donna's breath went shallow, the kind of breath people argue is panic breathing until it's not. I held the plastic part of the laminated sheet down with the eraser end of a pencil because the edges kept trying to touch. The headset's arm tickled the skin in front of my ear with its tiny internal purr. "Part of keeping rooms cool is venting," dispatcher said, conversational, as if we were on a porch with drinks watching weather. "You've been a good vent. You haven't tried to warm it up with belief or dignity. That's why you were chosen. You keep everything right under the boil." I almost laughed. If he knew me, he knew about the stove, the pan, the oil. "You," I said, and he cut me off with a generous father tone. "Will you help me move the line?" he asked. "Not abandon, not pull anyone screaming. Just move the line an inch closer so people can stand at it without drowning in the dark." "It's humane," he said, without irony. "I won't hurt them," I said, and heard what kind of line my voice liked most. "You already did," he said gently. "You put them on hold. You made them hum. You taught them rules." The boy's breath moved behind the words like an old man sleeping. I could almost hear him smile in his sleep. The room smelled of hot sweetness and clean paper. "Keep it cool," Donna whispered behind me. I didn't turn. If I turned, I would put my hand on her shoulder and feel nothing and collapse. "He's bending the safe rule," she said. "He's making you wave with your voice." "How does it stop?" I asked. Silence in my ear. The question hit a place like a brick hits a pond and sinks. "It doesn't," the dispatcher said, and there was genuine sorrow in it. "It holds. That's all we ever get. Holding is mercy. If I were someone else, I'd have hung up and smashed the thermostat and poured oil down my throat like a ticket to hell. If I were someone else, I'd have prayed. I am the person who keeps lists." I pulled my Post-it from my skin and stuck it to the desk so the glue could breathe. I took out my pen. On the back of the incident report Donna had been clutching like a rag. I wrote a new rule in my own hand without looking at the words as they formed, the way your body writes sometimes when the person who lives in it is busy not waving. Rule 0. When he uses your name, answer with someone else's. I clicked my pen shut. I put the headset back on properly. The plastic pressed into the cartilage that holds sound and rules in place. "Jess," I said into the line, using the name the grief woman had given me, using the name that was never mine and always mine and comforts strangers like a soft towel. The line paused. I heard nothing for the space of half a heartbeat, as if the lungs on the other end had forgotten how. The vent exhaled. The thermostat stayed. The mirror me tilted her head minutely, the way a person hears a distant train. "Good," dispatcher said, and it didn't sound like approval. It sounded like a margin note. "That buys you something." His tone shifted. A little slip. The boy on the line whispered, "Pleased." He moved the line, like someone who helped push a couch and felt it bump into the wall that proves the room exists. "What did it buy?" I asked. "Time," he said. 9 minutes. I hung up. I know. I did what I swore we don't do. I took the line and I dropped it without clean ending. Donna made a small noise that was half an objection and half that old survival sound women make in offices when something passes through them and they want to be polite to the part of the world that isn't doing the passing through. 9 minutes until what? 9 minutes to get warm? 9 minutes until the glass waved on its own? The scrape the building had been doing since the rules appeared came right on schedule from somewhere behind the break room, like a table sliding closer. It lined up with my heart in a way that made my vision frame in. I ran cold water in the break room sink and stuck my wrists under until they felt like someone else's bones. The rule says keep it cool. The rule says hum only when you must. The new rule I wrote says try not to be you if being you is an invitation engraved in heat. I stood with my arms in the sink and breathed through my mouth and listened to the building rearrange its furniture behind the walls. My watch ticked 9 minutes. I went back to the desk. The phones didn't ring. The vent exhaled. The mirror stood quiet. Donna had her head down, elbows on knees, hands hanging, the posture of someone in a hospital hallway, holding a bad taste in their mouth that the machine put there. "He thinks he's kind," she said to the carpet. "He thinks moving the line is a mercy. We think keeping the line is a mercy. Either way, it's a leash." "I'm going to try something," I said, like a person in a movie who then dies. I sat headset on. I waited. The ring came late, not 2:14, not trio. One ring, soft, like a knock at a bedroom door you forgot to lock. I picked up and didn't speak. "You said my name." I said dispatcher first. It made the line jump. It made the vent change pitch. It made the thermostat blink once, as if reminded of its little job. The mirror me laughed without sound, and it shook my ribs. Saying his name first cut something. Not a power, a path. The call stayed up. He waited. "Let's exchange," I said. "You give me yours. I give you mine." He smiled at his breath, and it made me want to throw up dental floss. "Names are heat," he said. "Rooms are cool." "Then give me your rule," I said. "One you don't put on laminate." Silence. 9 minutes sat in the room like a visitor who checks their phone at the end of dinner. He said, finally, in a smaller voice that had a crease of something human in it. He can't help the reflection. It's not a trick. It's a spill. He is bad at glass. I asked because I'm stupid with pronouns when it helps my heart keep beating. He said, and there wasn't a god or a devil. It was the shape in the vent hurting itself on edges the way I always have. I thought of every caller who said the refrigerator hum became a voice. The TV off surface showed a head that wasn't theirs. If he is bad at glass, then the safe rule was never safe. It was bait, or it was a muzzle, or it was both. The deceptive safety wasn't that waving would start something. It was that not waving makes you walk near windows to test yourself until there is no room without glass. I felt something like pity move through me and hoped it would cool me down. "What do you do with the oil?" I asked, not brave, not rhetorical. True question. He hummed. Not the note we hum, a lower one, the kind that comes from tile rooms and old pipes. "It makes your mouth into a room," he said simply. "Rooms are where work happens." I put my hand over my mouth because my mouth suddenly felt like a door left swinging in a wind I could not afford. The taste came on anyway. Sweet, burnt old. The room pulsed in time with some larger building. I wasn't inside. I took my hand down because covering a door doesn't fix a door. I could have made a grand refusal. I could have unplugged everything and told Donna to run and smash the spoon rest and set fire to the incident report. Instead, I did the smallest rebellion I've ever done, and I think it's the one that kept me mine for 9 more nights. I wrote Rule 0 neatly on a fresh post-it and stuck it on the underside of the laminated sheet, where it would be an infection. People think revolutions are loud. Most are adhesive. That week, I answered the 214 ring on 3 and said, "Jess," and he let it pass. I kept the room cool. I hummed when I had to and kept my mouth shut when I didn't. I did not wave first because there was no first anymore. The mirror and I moved together like we've been dancing for years and only now learned the name of the song. The boy called and told me his teacher smelled like wintergreen and his dog had started sleeping under his bed in the shape of a circle and his mother had stopped knocking when she entered rooms. He hummed. I told him to stop. I said please. He liked it. On the 9th night, the scrape stopped. The spoon rest was gone. The cabinet shelves were clean, the citrus sad smell of a wiped thing. Donna stopped coming in. The next morning, there was an email from HR with bullet points about grief resources and a firm reminder that using personal items in shared spaces is not approved. No one said her name in the email. I said it out loud at my desk, and the vent exhaled long and not like comfort. I folded the incident report into a shape that could have been a paper airplane if I believed in throwing. The 9th night after Rule 0, the post-it with my writing had curled at the corners and fallen onto the carpet, where shoes had softened it. I picked it up. The adhesive had given up. I stuck it on the side of the desk where my knees touch. It fell again. I stuck it on the monitor. It slid. I stuck it to the back of my hand. It held and pulled my hair and reminded me I am an animal held in by skin with a nervous system that can be written to. I looked at my reflection and lifted my hand with the note like a flag. The mirror me lifted hers, and something in the angle of it was eager. The safe rule slept in the ditch, retired. The vent exhaled. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. I answered and didn't speak. "My name," he said. "Jess," I said, quick like touching a hot pan. The line hummed, frustrated, and then smooth in the way electrical things smooth when they find parallel. 9 more nights, he said without flourish. "We like your rule. It will hold. You could be the person who wrote it." I wanted to ask if that was an appointment or a punishment. I wanted to ask if Donna had waved or hummed wrong or warmed the room. I wanted to ask what happens if you stop answering at all. But I've sat with enough people at the edge to know there isn't a finally. There's the next breath, the next ring, the next safe thing that wasn't. So this is what I did, and it will disappoint you because you wanted heroics or collapse. I wrote the rules on a new sheet with my pen, slow, each letter obedient. I wrote Rule 0 at the top and boxed it. I slid the laminate over it as if tucking it into bed. I lowered the thermostat to 69 and then unplugged and replugged and kept it at 70 because the job is the job. I hummed when I had to. I stopped when I could. I taught the new night person, a woman with hair like a curtain and eyes that flick to the window too often, the rules in my voice and also the line in mine that says, "You don't owe anyone your belief." I put the spoon rests absence into the script where the microwave talk used to be. I told the boys stories about rooms that are good to sit in, rooms with smoke detectors that actually work, rooms with feather duvets that smell like clean, rooms where the safe rule is a joke because there is no glass. He hummed anyway. He said please when he wanted me to let him. He liked it. On the 9th night, the scrape came back, not from the break room, but from somewhere under the desk, like something was pulling a long table away from me and needed me not to notice. The ring came early and late, the way grief does. The mirror waved before either of us did, and I didn't punish it. I lifted my hand, and I let my reflection lead. I folded my fingers backward farther than they go, and my body didn't break. It stretched. My palm made a shape like a starfish. A note rose in the room that wasn't ours. The vent exhaled. The thermostat blinked and steadied. Faithful animal. I'm talking to you now because I promised myself I would not turn into a person who only speaks in rules. I promised myself I wouldn't teach people to love the inch without telling them what collects there. Maybe I'm confessing because confession is heat and I spent months learning to be cool. Maybe I'm testifying because I've been given 9 nights and you don't waste a single one by keeping your mouth a room without guests. Here, at the end of the 9th, I'm sitting with a laminated sheet under my palms like a map, and I'm writing my name on a small piece of paper, and I'm folding it, and I'm hiding it under the keyboard where the earlier post-it used to live. I'm going to answer on 3. When he uses my name, I'm going to say another until the paper under my hand warms to the plastic. When callers use mine, I'm going to move them to Donna's empty seat, and for a second that holds like a stage light, the line will lead somewhere I don't own. If you hear your vent change pitch at 2:14, count. If your window smiles a second too early, keep your hands flat. If your mouth fills with sweetness when the heat kicks on, swallow slowly or not at all. If your throat feels a ring settle, press your thumb to it and say, please, like a spell you don't believe in. The last thing I'll plant before I stop is small. On the underside of the break room cabinet, where the spoon rest lived and the stain taut glazed new colors, someone, me or me, scratched a line with a key. It's just a little circle with lines, the worst sun you've ever seen. If you run your finger over it by accident while you're looking for a mug, it will catch your skin. You'll jerk your hand away and say, ow, not because it hurt, but because you remembered to. That reaction will save you or keep you. They are often the same. The phones are waking. The building breathes. The boy is somewhere with his mouth close to a vent, practicing please. I'm lifting the headset. I'm letting the lamination touch the backs of my fingers because I want to see if I can bear it without flinching. I'm staring at the window and letting it not be safe. I'm keeping it cool. I'm humming only when I must. I'm saying a name that isn't mine like an umbrella. I'm standing on the seam.